The most extreme form of bereavement is parental bereavement, and I know firsthand of this pain after losing my baby girl Millie at only 6 days old, with no indication of complication prior to her birth. It came as a complete shock to us. We never got to see her eyes, we never got to hear her cry. As the weeks passed and we were riding the tsunami of grief, those around us expressed how useless they felt. They didn't know that we too felt so useless. We didn't even know what we needed, but I knew at that point I needed to speak out. From Millie's life and death, this podcast was birthed. Little Life, Big Loss, as a safe space to talk about baby loss, grief, trauma, heartache, and hope. A safe space for lost parents to share their stories of their real-life angels. A place for those nearest and dearest to learn about our journeys and to gain a deeper understanding in how to help those who are riding the tsunami of grief. Welcome to Little Life, Big Loss. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to another episode of Little Life, Big Loss. Today I'm joined by the beautiful Hannah, who is actually a Gold Coast gal. She's up here, not too far from me. We haven't met yet. We've connected through social media. Hannah filled out one of the forms to be on the podcast, and so we've finally found a time to get her on. This is going to be the last episode of the year recorded. It'll be out early January. And yeah, as always, I don't know a whole lot about Hannah's story. I've read a little bit on her form, but I love to just be in the moment and hear every part of it in depth, so that I can authentically ask questions and things like that. I know that Hannah has a little angel in heaven, and I know she has 2 beautiful little kids on earth. So we're going to hear all about that today. Just firstly, thank you so much. I know this was super overwhelming for you, and you're feeling, I feel like we're both just having such an emotional day. I think it's, a couple of days till Christmas and I'm going to cry already. I've already cried to my husband this morning, just saying, I just hate being me sometimes. So yeah, I'm with you. We're going to cry together. We're going to share some tears and share our story. But I know that little Imri is so proud of you, and she can't wait for you to share her story and your story. So
and thank you so much for having me.
That's okay. It's such an honor. I feel really blessed always when somebody's brave enough to share, but also trust me with this space, because I know it's a big one. So thank you for allowing me the privilege. So my first question is always, the day we lose our child, we change forever as a person. So who was Hannah before she experienced baby loss?
That's such a difficult question, and I've been racking my brain because sometimes it's hard to remember who you were before you lost your child. I'm going to start crying already.
I know.
We were just carefree. We already had a beautiful daughter called Olive. We were actually travelling around Australia in a caravan, so we were living the gypsy life, and we had planned to continue to do that. Our biggest problem, I guess, was trying to figure out where we were going to go next.
Wow.
That was just our life. It was a beautiful lifestyle, and it's something that we miss. And then, the year before we had her, we got married in February. It just was like the perfect year until, our whole world came crumbling down towards
until
the
it
end
wasn't.
of the year.
Yeah, it's so crazy. I actually, we got married in the March this year. It feels like a fucking lifetime ago. And I changed my profile picture about 2 weeks before I birthed Millie, and I wrote "our best year yet." And I just when I remembered that like a few weeks ago, and I was like, fuck, like what went from like the best year ever is now the fucking worst experience of my life. Like, isn't it so crazy?
Those reels that people put on Instagram, and it's like a reel remembering the year that was. I just remember like my phone made one up for me, and it was just like we got married, we were at all these beautiful places. It was just the most perfect year. But I just was like, it's just all just basically gone because of how the year ended. And I just couldn't bring myself to, celebrate the year that was because of what we were going through.
And so what year was this?
Last year, so 2022.
Wow. So, and what year was Olive born?
2020. So she's just turned 3 in September.
Yeah, such a beautiful name. So you guys were traveling around, you were living in a caravan, you had Olive, you got married in the February last year. You had planned on having another baby and taking that baby around Australia as well. And so talk about conception of your second child.
So with both girls, they were very much planned. I had to work with a beautiful and amazing naturopath over in Karratha, just to get my cycle regular enough so that I could fall pregnant. So we did 3 or 4 months worth of preconception care with her leading up to each pregnancy. And I actually fell pregnant on our honeymoon after our wedding in February.
Mm-hmm.
So I was pregnant on the road, and I had my obstetrician here on the Gold Coast, who is just incredible. So she would send me everything that I needed when I needed it, and I would just book into wherever we were at the time. And then she would get all the results and just do a phone consult with me.
Yeah.
The pregnancy was okay. I had a few little things. I had an irregular heartbeat that was picked up quite early on because my heart rate kept on going really high. But it was just my heart was having an extra beat from the wrong chamber, basically. So it acted as if my heart rate was high when it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were in Darwin for about 2 months, and I just had a lot of problems with my, pelvic girdle pain and my back, and I went through a stage where I could hardly walk.
Mm-hmm.
It was that painful, I think, just from picking up Olive everywhere we went, and doing way too many hikes than what I should have been while I was pregnant. But other than that, it was an okay pregnancy. Probably not as easy as Olive's one, but it was nothing to, cry about, basically.
So the irregular heartbeat, because my heart rate was always so high. I have so many videos of me with my irregularly high, but I never really thought that was anything. Is that not normal? I just thought, this is just pregnancy.
It can be quite common, yeah. Okay. So there's nothing that they're going to do about it. I just had one of those echo tests where they monitor you for 24 hours with the little portable heart monitor, and it just picked up the irregular heartbeat that was beating the wrong way. So it added in an extra heartbeat when really there wasn't technically one. And apparently it can resolve itself after pregnancy, but they weren't worried. It wasn't causing me any issues, so...
I had the worst pelvic girdle pain as well. I was really surprised at how early it came on. I thought, your body would probably be sore, once your baby's bigger and you're heavy. But I was, early on. And then I went to the physio and she was like, your muscles are already just starting to relax. Is it the relaxin hormone that you get with pregnancy? Yeah. And so, oh, my word, I was like, my belly's still tiny and I'm in so much pain. How's it going to be by the end?
Yep.
And then I got sciatica and all the fun things.
Oh, no.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot.
So was the plan always to come back to the GC to have your baby?
Yeah, so our plan was to come back. We had an investment property here, just a unit. So the plan was to come back in September. We renovated the bathroom. We're just notorious for doing things 1,000 times, over than what we should.
Yeah.
Fill up our plate way too much.
Mm-hmm.
So we renovated the bathroom in September, and then we were just sticking around until Bub was born. And then when we felt ready to go again, we were just going to rent out the unit again and head off.
Okay. Yeah. And so that was September, and when was Bub due?
So she was due on the 28th of October.
Okay. And so what happened then? You were back on the GC.
Yep, so we were back on the Gold Coast.
Did you go into spontaneous labour?
Yep. So with my first, Olive, the plan was to have a vaginal delivery, and I went into spontaneous labour and everything progressed really well, but she was posterior. Made it to 10 centimetres, got to the pushing phase, but I never had the urge to push. And so right at the last minute, my obstetrician did an examination and she was stuck quite bad. So she ended up in an emergency caesarean.
Okay.
So then my plan for IMRI was to do a VBAC.
Okay.
And I was basically the perfect candidate for a VBAC. You know, I'd waited the recommended time. I had no complications. You know, age was fine. All those risk factors were really low. And my obstetrician supported, you know, my choice for a VBAC. As long as there were a couple of things. So she couldn't be breached, and I couldn't be induced, and I had to be monitored throughout the whole labour, which those were fine. I was all good with that. So I got to her due date, and she still had no sign of coming. So I went to my obstetrician, and the plan was, I think this was must have been the Wednesday or something. The plan was that if she hadn't come on her own by 41 weeks, which was the Friday when she does theatre, then I would have a caesarean on that day.
Yeah.
So then it got to the 31st of October, and I was 40 and 3. So she was born 40 and 4. So 40 and 3, Halloween night, I just was like, I do not want, you know, my baby to be born on Halloween. But anyway, she decided that, you know, labour was going to start on Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my first contraction at about 9 o'clock that night, and they came pretty regular straight away. They were, I think, 15 minutes apart. And the midwives had told me when they get to 10 minutes apart, come in because you need to be monitored.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, everyone had gone to bed. I had my mum there for Olive. My husband had just gone to bed, and I just was like, I'm not going to wake anyone. I've been through this before. I'll just chill out in the lounge room, get on the ball, you know, turn the candles on. It was raining, so it pretty much started the exact same as Olive's labour. And then it got to about midnight and contractions kind of eased off. You know, they were irregular again, coming, you know, every hour, maybe every 2 hours. So I thought I'm just going to try to get some sleep because, you know, she's going to be born tomorrow. So I went to bed and I just kind of was dozing in and out between contractions. And then it got to about 4 o'clock in the morning and I just got this really intense one, and I woke up and I was like, okay, we're on here. We're on. And I probably just timed them for an hour before waking up my hubby because they were coming, you know, between 10 and 8 minutes. Packed all the stuff, told Mum we were going, jumped in the car and went to the hospital. So I was birthing at Pindara, which wasn't far from where our unit was. Got to the hospital and they took one look at me and were like, you're fine, you know, we don't think you're in active labour. Just chill out, you know, it's going to be a long day for you. And I was like, oh, okay, can I go to my acupuncture appointment to try to, you know, get things going? And they were like, oh, possibly, but we'll just check you anyways, just so that we don't send you away if you're further along than what we think. So my obstetrician came down and she checked me and I was 5 centimetres. And so basically they were like, you're not going anywhere. You're in active labour. You're having this baby soon.
Yeah.
So then I had the option to break my water. And we decided against it because, again, I just wanted to eliminate any risk of anything. I just wanted everything to just happen itself.
Yeah.
And it was just the most calmest, happy labour. I had my headphones on. I was dancing between contractions. I was walking up and down the stairs in the room to try to, you know, hurry things along. We were chatting to the beautiful midwife, telling her all about our travels and everything. It just was so different to Olive's labour. I felt like this was just going to be, you know, just a perfect story.
Yeah. Probably a beautiful healing experience based on the fact that Olive's ended up in an emergency C. So
yeah. And then, so I got checked again and I was, I think, 7 centimetres, but my water still hadn't broke. So I was like, I'm just going to hop in the shower and just get some water for pain relief. Got in the shower and I started bleeding. So my husband called the midwife in and she looked and she just kind of said, you know, this could be normal because, you know, you might be further along now. And sometimes there can be a bit of bleeding as you're, you know, getting into the transitioning phase. But we'll just get you out of the shower, we'll put a buoy under you, and we'll just make sure that everything's, you know, okay. And within a couple of minutes of getting out and hopping on the buoy, my waters broke. And in my waters were a lot of blood. So at this stage, they were like, you know, that's not normal. Rang my obstetrician, she came rushing down. Bub's heart rate started dropping because I was connected to the monitor.
Mm-hmm.
Heart rate started dropping and it wasn't coming up quick enough that they would like. So I got checked again, and at this stage, like, my contractions were just in overdrive. I didn't even have, I think, 10 seconds in between my contractions. They just, like, were so fast and so intense, and I just remember, like, I couldn't even get out a sentence before the next contraction came. And so my obstetrician was like, this isn't normal. They're not supposed to be this intense, this close together at any stage. I'm going to check you. So she checked me. I was 9 centimetres, but Bub was stuck again. And she said, something's not right. I have a feeling you've had an abruption. I'm just getting you into theatre now. So straight away she called a Cat 1, which is, you know, mother and baby are at risk.
Fuck.
The most severe, you know, emergency form of theatre. And then all of a sudden I just had everyone rush in, strip me off. I was in the gown, jewelry off, wheeling down to the theatre room. I just remember being on the bed just thinking, not again. Like, didn't want to be in that position again. And then got into theatre, and the anaesthetist couldn't get the spinal to work because my contractions were just so intense. I just couldn't stay still no matter how much I tried. And then he basically said, he goes, if you don't sit up now, you are going to go under a general anaesthetic.
Yeah.
And then literally everyone in the room just grabbed me and just put me up, gave me the gas. I bit down on the gas so hard that I shattered 2 of my teeth.
Oh my
into
gosh.
complete pieces because just the pain was just unimaginable. And he got the spinal in, thank goodness. Laid back down, and then everyone was like, okay, time to calm down. You're okay. We're going in now. Bub will be out, you know, very soon. And I just remember laying there. I got the, you know, the cesarean shakes. And it just was taking a lot longer than what I'd remembered with Olive. And my obstetrician was just struggling so hard to get her out. She had people helping her. Like, they were grunting. My body was just moving from side to side. They couldn't get her out. I had that spray that goes under your tongue to try to stop your uterus from contracting so much. And it just went on for what felt like forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I just went numb. I knew something wasn't right, but I just didn't want to let myself feel it. So I just literally just went numb. And then after what seemed like forever, I remember the anaesthetist was next to me, and he was like, okay, the curtain's going to come down now. Your bub's coming out. And down dropped the curtain, and then all of a sudden it just went straight back up.
Fuck. Oh, honey.
And Bub got rushed over. So at this point we didn't know that she was definitely a girl. She went over to, the resus table, and everyone just came in. never heard her cry. And I just remember laying there just being like, is she okay? Like, and the anaesthetist was, he was so beautiful. He was, this is okay. This is what happens when Bub comes out a little bit lifeless. They're just trying to bring her back. And he kept on saying her. And, that was the only time we got like, she's a girl. My husband wasn't allowed over there. And I just remember just looking, and they were all working on her. So she came out absolutely lifeless. And they resuscitated her for 10 minutes. And they got her back. So after the 10 minutes of, everything that they did, she came back and she was breathing and she had a heartbeat. And they just said, we've got to take her to NICU. She's really sick. We don't know what's going on, but we've got to take her to NICU. And like you, because I heard your story, I've always said if something happens with the baby, like, Sean, you go. Like, leave me, I'll be fine. Yeah. Just go with the baby. So he left and, like, the feeling of just laying there with all these complete strangers and just, the stitch-up takes a while. So you're there just by yourself, just not with your baby, not with your husband. And, no one was talking to me at this stage. I think they were all just in shock. Yeah. And so got stitched up, got cleaned up, and got transferred to recovery. And still at this point, I still didn't know what was happening. And I just remember, like, the beautiful midwife came out and was like, are you okay? Like, she'll be fine. They're in the best of hands. And then I don't remember how much time had passed, but then my husband came back and he said, she's okay. Oh. She's in NICU, she's breathing, she's on a ventilator, and they're just doing tests to try to figure out what's wrong. Yeah. And at this point I was like, okay, so many bubs go to NICU. Yeah. She's just had a bit of a rough start to life. She'll be okay. And everything will be all good. So then I finally got wheeled into NICU and wheeled up next to her, and they were still working on her. And at this point she had the ventilator in and she was wide awake. Oh. They were like, she's doing really well, like she's breathing above the ventilator, but we're just keeping it in just to help her. And she was like moving her hand, trying to, pull it out. And I was like, oh, she's fine. Like, she's all good. And at first they thought maybe she had too much, I think, carbon monoxide or something in her lungs. So they were trying to, help her get that out. And they called the Neo rescue team from Brisbane, and they
our stories are so the same, aren't they? Fuck me.
Yeah. When I was listening to yours, that's why I was like, oh my gosh, like, it just sounds like you're telling my story.
Yeah, wow.
So they called the Neo rescue team, and two beautiful midwives arrived not long after I got into the NICU. And they were trying to toss up where to send us. Apparently Gold Coast Uni didn't have the facilities or didn't have enough beds or something that we couldn't go there. So they were like, your best bet is Royal Brisbane. So we're going to transport her up to the Royal Brisbane and see what's going on. Yep. And so I was like, okay, Sean, get in the car, follow them up there. I begged for them to let me go, but I had a drain. I was connected to everything, and they were like, look, it's just not possible. Like, we're really sorry, but it's not possible. And then they were like, maybe tomorrow morning, we'll try to do a hospital transfer, and then, you might be able to go up there then. And so Sean left to go get the car and, drive around to the ambulance. And I just remember as they were wheeling her out, she was in this, the little crib that they transport them in. They wheeled her next to me, and I just reached out and held her hand. And she just looked me dead in the eyes. And I was so glad I did this, but I quickly like snapped a picture.
Oh.
And so I have this picture of her just looking me dead in the eyes, holding my hand. And at the time I was like, what are you doing, Hannah? Like, don't like put your phone away. Like,
that is so fucking precious. Like that is
now,
magic.
Yeah.
That is so precious.
And then so they wheeled her out. And then I was left in NICU for a while by myself. I had no one coming in. I had to wait for a room. And then I got wheeled eventually. Like, it was quite a while. And I got wheeled into a room, and they just said, this is the number of Imri's room. Like, she's made it to Brisbane. She did really well on the travel, like on the journey. Your husband's here. This is the room. Like, call anytime for an update. And so I just was calling every hour, checking up on her. They still had no answers, and but she was doing well.
Yeah.
And it was about 2:00 was the last time I rang, 2 a.m. And I must have dozed off because the next minute I had my obstetrician and 2 midwives just run in the room and just wake me up and say, have you got your phone on you? Like, have you heard? And my heart just sank, and I just was like, no, like, what's going on? And they said, Imri's taken a turn, and you need to get up there. And I said, okay, well, like, how? Like, my mum had Olive at home. She couldn't come and get me at 3:00 in the morning. No ambulances were available. No hospital transfers were available.
I was about to say, why did they not just, why didn't they transfer you in an ambulance right at, like, the same as they did for me? They put me in an ambulance and sent me straight up there. Like, why didn't they do that for you initially?
I know. I feel like I was let down quite a lot with, I don't know, hospital policy or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they said, the next transfer isn't going to be until 6:00 in the morning. So do you have anyone you could call? And so I rang a good friend of ours. And him and his wife have, they had a 3-year-old as well and one on the way. But he literally jumped in the car at 3:00 in the morning and drove straight to the hospital. And they just pulled everything out. The cannulas, the catheter, the drain.
Fuck?
Stocked me up on painkillers and wheeled me out to the car. And then, as I was getting into the car, the hospital rang me. And they just said, look, don't panic. We think we might know what's going on. And if it's this, then she'll be okay. So they thought she might have had like a hematoma between her skull and her skin.
Yeah.
So like a bleed to the head. And they said, most babies will recover from this. So if it's that, we're going to treat it like that. And, it's looking good. So then at least that trip to Brisbane, I had some hope. It wasn't, like I'm going to drive up there and, she's going to be really...
I'm going to see her. I'm going to be near her. Yeah.
And so I got to Brisbane. They met me out the front with a wheelchair and wheeled me in and went straight to NICU where she was. And at this stage, her eyes weren't open. They never opened again.
Oh.
And she was so just bruised. Like her whole skin was just like purple and blue. She had everything attached to her. Like she had everything from like things going in both her wrists. She had one in her belly button. She had one down her nose, one in her mouth.
Yeah.
She just, she was this perfect 8-pound baby in a room full of these tiny little preemie babies. She just didn't look like she belonged there.
Yeah.
And then, so at that stage, they still didn't know what was going on. they had her on a, like they were cooling her down because when they cool her down, if they've got brain damage, it can help with the brain damage because of the lack of oxygen. But then when they were cooling her, all the blood tests that were coming back, she was still bleeding somewhere. And so then after I think like 4 blood transfusions, they had to make the call to take her off the cooling to try to stop the bleeding.
Fuck.
Because the cooling can also increase the bleeding. So they had to, weigh up their options as to what one they were going to treat.
Fuck.
So they took her off and tried to stop the bleeding. And then, so we still had no answers. They were still just, she was there. They were just doing all these tests. And that went on for the whole, pretty much next day. We couldn't hold her. The most we could do was just put our hand on her. We called all our family, so my mum, my stepdad, my sister, and Sean's mum and dad were there that day, and Olive, she came and visited her. I met her for the first time, and I just remember her being at the end of the thing saying, keep fighting, keep fighting.
Honey.
And so we were just in and out. I was, still expressing colostrum because I thought, being in NICU, it's when she's going to need it the most. Yeah. I had like 50 meals in the freezer ready to go, but, she couldn't have any yet. But I was, just in and out all day, either up expressing in my room or down with her. And then it got to that night and she had a seizure. And they were like, we're going to do an MRI. They were going to wait until, I think it was 2 days because they were that busy. They didn't have a spot for an MRI and they thought, she was going to make it. But after the seizure, they were like, we need to do an MRI and see what's really going on. And they said, it's going to take about 2 hours, so go back up to your room and we'll call you as soon as she gets back. And so I went to the room and we were sitting in there and we hear this knock at the door and 4 people walk in. And the first one who walks in grabbed a box of tissues and just sat it in front of me. And I just looked at Sean and I knew it wasn't good. Then they basically said, and the MRI showed a catastrophic bleed to the brain. The whole left side of her brain pretty much was non-existent. It was just a big black patch. And then there were big pockets on the right side. They basically said she will be a vegetable. She'll never be able to talk, walk, eat, see, hear. And that if she makes it, she's more than likely not going to make it. And I just, even then at that point, I still didn't accept it. I just was like, that's fine. Like, that's just the cards we're being dealt.
Yeah.
I'll do everything.
Life.
Like, yeah.
We'll put ramps in the house. We'll change the car like you do. You plan everything that you would do to still bring that child home.
Yeah. And I just said to Sean, I was like, this is just our life. Like, she's going to be okay. We'll manage and we'll deal. And so we went down there and she started having seizure after seizure. And they just said to us, if something happens and the ventilator comes out, like, do you want us to resuscitate her again? They just were like, she's on enough morphine just to keep her comfortable, but it's not going to, take her life.
Yeah.
And she's on blood pressure medication, and she was just attached to everything. And they just said, you know, like today, just spend time making memories, because it's not looking good. And so we had the most beautiful midwife, and we asked for a private room so that we could just spend the day with her. And this beautiful midwife, she was so young, she didn't have any kids, but she was just so incredible. And you know, they went out and they brought little silicone molds so that we could like do impressions of her fingerprints so we could make jewelry.
Yeah.
They organised a heartfelt photographer. They just spent the day just, you know, taking pictures of us, and we got her baptised. And we just, all day, I just had her on my chest. They let us hold her. And I just laid there skin to skin all day with, you know, our family coming and going, and Olive there, and we had the photo shoot, and she just, yeah, you could just tell she wasn't going to make it. Yeah. And then so that afternoon, they couldn't up her like morphine or anything anymore.
Yeah.
And the neurosurgeon came, and he just said to us, like, it's the worst bleed that they've ever seen in their career. There's literally nothing you could do. They're not even going to refer her over to the children's hospital, to the neurosurgeons. There's just, there's nothing you can do. She's in pain. You know, we're upping the morphine, we're upping the blood pressure medication, but there's only so much that we can, you know, give her because she was so little. And they just said, it's totally up to you, but, you know, think about taking her off the machine.
Yeah.
You know, you can do it in your own time. They said she's probably not going to make another day. So, you know, if you want to do it like in a nice, you know, nice way as a family, and, you know, you can hold her and all of this sort of stuff. And so at that point we kind of just, I think it hit us then that, you know, she was not going to make it. There was nothing we could do. You know, she didn't have that option to come home and, you know, in any state. And so at 5:00 that afternoon, after our family had said their goodbyes and left, we started taking, you know, her off the machine. And she passed away on my chest. And she didn't like, they said when you take her off the machine, you know, she might, you know, make a sound, or she might, you know, move, or, but she didn't. Yeah. She literally didn't make a single noise. She didn't make a sound. She didn't move. And Sean and I just laid there and just, you know, just whispering to her, like, how beautiful she was and how loved she was. And we were just so sorry. And then
I can't even believe how fucking similar our stories are. Like, absolutely mind blowing. Like, different diagnosis, but fuck, like, literally, like, so fucking similar. Like,
it's crazy.
It's so heartbreaking. Like
she was 2 days old.
Yeah.
And she passed at 5:15 on the 3rd of November. And we bathed her, and we dressed her in some beautiful clothes.
Yeah.
And then, we said our goodbyes, and I knew that if I didn't leave at that point, I would never leave.
Yeah.
And so we left and went back up to the room, and it's so cruel because they put you in the maternity ward.
Oh, fuck.
And I just remember Sean and I laying there listening to the babies cry around us.
Oh, fuck.
And I just was like, I need to leave. Like, I can't be here.
Yeah.
And just before we were about to leave, my milk came in.
Oh.
I guess because I had been holding her like the day.
Yeah.
And I was still like, expressing up until, a certain point.
Yeah.
And I just remember a midwife coming in, and I just was like, we need to leave. Like, can I be discharged, please? And so she found a doctor that was willing to discharge us. And he just came in and just said, we don't normally do this, but in your circumstance, we're willing to.
Mm-hmm.
Sign this form. Here's 6 weeks worth of Clexane injections.
Fuck. Is that to stop the milk? What's that? What's Clexane?
No, so it's a blood thinner. So I have a blood clotting disorder.
Oh, Jesus.
And you're the highest risk after birth for 6 weeks. So I just have to go on Clexane injections every day for 6 weeks. So he just gave me a whole bag full of it and was like, now I can give you a tablet to dry up your milk, but, it's going to mess with your hormones and, it might make you, more upset and all this sort of stuff.
I was going to say, more fucked up than we were already going to be. Yep.
Yeah, and I was like, no, I already am. Like, I don't need something else that's going to make it worse. And so I declined it. And we just went home and just got in bed with our little girl and just cuddled her and yeah.
Fuck. And what was Olive's, what did you say to Olive when you got home?
So she was asleep, so we just, the next day, we booked a Airbnb in Kingscliff for all of our family, and we just went down there.
Yeah.
Because we just didn't want to go home.
Yeah.
We went down there and we just had time to, just lay in bed and just cry, basically, because we had our family there to help with Olive.
Yeah.
But we just told her that, Imri was very sick.
Yeah.
And because she was so little, they couldn't do anything for her.
Yeah.
She didn't have the strength to get better.
Yeah.
So she's now gone to live in the stars. And she'll always be with you.
Yeah.
But she just won't be physically here.
Yeah. And does she still talk about her now?
Yeah, so she was only 2 at the time.
Yeah.
But she's just incredible. Like, it just blows my mind how much she can retain and remember. She remembers everything, like literally everything. And she was affected quite bad. She developed a stutter.
Oh, no.
Because at this point she'd never been away from me.
Oh.
She'd never gone to daycare. We don't have family up at the Gold Coast, so, she was just always with me. And we had so many appointments to, cemeteries and the funeral home and everything else. We just had to keep leaving her with Mum, and yeah, she developed a stutter and she just changed.
Oh,
and yeah, so like she still talks about it all the time, and she's very much part of our lives. But yeah, she just remembers everything. It's crazy.
That has not been spoken about on an episode yet. Like, there's been episodes where there's been older siblings or living children prior to a loss, and that's never come up before, that, not negatively affected. Like, they're always obviously sad that their sibling is gone and they miss them and things like that. But to have like an actual trauma response, like a stutter, that's so awful. Like that's just another challenge for you, right? Like, and another thing.
Yeah. We took her to the pediatrician, and like our pediatrician that was there for Imri, and she's amazing. And she just said, you know, when they go through a big emotional event or a change, they just, you know, it can affect them with their speech. And, you know, she's obviously just holding it all inside, and it's just coming out in a stutter. And it's only like the last few months that she's actually like come back out to herself, and it's like a whole weight's been lifted off her shoulders, and yeah, she's just her normal self again.
And so what kind of things have helped getting her back? Like, this is obviously such a massive part of it as well. Like, so the pediatrician helped. What other things did you do in that space?
Well, she developed like this, I don't know what you call it, but like she had an obsession with like a toy.
Yeah.
So she would get a toy, and it was like she had the weight of the world on her shoulders, and she had to protect this toy. And if she didn't protect it, and if it wasn't in her sight, then it was going to leave and go live in the stars within me. So that's how, like, she, I guess, took it as, you know, if she can't be there for something, then it's going to go and leave her. So we took her to a play psychologist who, like, worked with her for a little bit. But honestly, the only thing that's helped her and that's brought her back is the birth of our son. As soon as he was born and he was healthy and came home, it was like this whole weight just lifted off her shoulders. And she's just happy again, and she's back to her normal self, and she's not obsessing over things, and she's just completely herself again. She really needed to know, I guess, that, you know,
not all babies die. Yeah. Fuck.
Yeah.
That's so heavy. That is so heavy.
But every night, you know, she'll blow kisses to the stars, and she'll say, "Love you, Imri." And every weekend we go up to, you know, it's called Imri's Special Place, the cemetery. You know, we give her fresh flowers every weekend. And we just tell her, you know, that's where we go to leave her flowers and, you know, talk to her. And she's not physically there, but, you know, it's her little special place. And, you know, you can always talk to her at any time. She's always going to be with you. You know, you can feel her in your heart, but you can't actually see her, but that doesn't mean that she's not there.
Yeah.
And so she literally talks about her all the time. If someone says, you know, do you have any siblings? She's like, yes, a brother and a sister. And, you know, she's like,
that's
Christmas
amazing.
time now, like, Imri's got her own, like, Christmas sock, and, you know, she's got ornaments on the tree, and
yeah, I love
she's got her own Christmas tree up at the cemetery. And, you know, for her first birthday, we, you know, got a cake and spent a beautiful family day together. And yeah, she's very, very much a part of our lives, and Olive knows that. And and my grandpa's also, you know, in heaven too. So she says, whenever she talks about Imri, it's always Imri and Grandpa. Yeah. So, you know, Mummy, what do you think Imri and Grandpa are doing today?
That's beautiful.
You know, she just always, talks about them together.
That's heavy. That's so heavy. That's so much on you. Like, I just can't even believe the guilt that she was carrying, that was her responsibility to protect that baby. Like, that's just... like, what a beautiful little soul she is, that she felt that her little sister was her responsibility. Like, that is massive.
Yeah. Because she was just so excited, you know. Like the pediatrician said, like, it's like she's got the brain of, like, a 5-year-old, you know, to be able to, you know, comprehend what's happening. And, so she was just so excited. And then when everything happened, it just, her whole world flashed like that.
Yeah. And so
then, as a parent, like, you're going through it yourself, and then, you know, you just feel so awful because you know what your child is going through too.
Yeah. they've got
like
that
it's
grief.
not just you that's grieving, it's
Yeah.
your child too, and the fact that they have to go through that, and they are, like, it's just heartbreaking.
And like you said, like it changed her forever. And like, that's why I say at the beginning of the podcast, like when we lose our child, we're changed forever. And then the sibling is also the same, you know, and some obviously feel it more than others. And, you know, I do think it is going to it's made her this incredibly strong and beautiful and resilient and incredibly empathetic human. Like, that's what, you know, like she will do amazing things with that. You know, her confidence to say, yes, I have 2 siblings is phenomenal, because I know that even as lost parents, sometimes we struggle to even acknowledge how many kids we have because we get so fucking scared. And so her confidence is around that is so beautiful. And, you know, hopefully she will carry it. Oh, I have a story that I just imagined that this will be Olive in 30 years' time. So I was on a flight the other day. I had to fly back to the Central Coast for a family emergency. And on the way home, I got on board at the plane, and I had my little Millie bear in my handbag, as I always do. And a lot of people always comment on the bear, but they don't often say, like, ask why I'm carrying it when I don't have a child with me, clearly. And she said, oh, because you're in an exit row, you're going to have to put your bags up the top. Is that okay? And I said, yeah, that's fine. And I was like, she goes, oh, that's such a cute bear. Is it significant for something? Like, and I was like, yeah, actually, my little girl passed away in July. It was her bear. And she went, oh, my word, I'm so sorry. She said, my brother was actually a stillborn. And so this girl must have been 30 years old. And she said, it's so beautiful, the things the hospitals do for lost parents now. My mum got nothing back then. There was no photos, there was no bears, there was no nothing. And she said, what was your little girl's name? And I said, Millie Rose. And she said, Rose is my middle name. And so we just had this beautiful connection over her sharing her story of her brother from, say, 20 to 30 years ago. And then as the flight was landing, she came and gave me like a paper towel napkin, and it had my name on it, and inside it just said, dearest Rochelle, thank you so much for sharing your Millie Rose with me, and for you know, creating a space. Because I said to her, like, this about the podcast, and she said, you know, lots of love, Audrey JQ499 or whatever. But beautiful. I just had this vision then of Olive in 30 years time meeting a lost mum in an area, and then just like sharing her story about Imrie, you know, like you know, that makes and for that air hostess to be like, what was her name? And then to give me a handwritten letter, like no other air hostess that would have done that. No other human would have done that, but because she had experienced the loss of her brother, it made her who she was.
Yeah. And I hope that is the case. And I hope, you know, like from you starting this podcast and all the stuff that's happening these days with it, I hope that in the future a lot more people do talk about it and are empathetic like that. Like I kind of feel let down because I didn't have many people that wanted to talk about it. You know, this is the first time I'm really sharing my story to anyone besides, you know, maybe a handful of people that actually asked what happened. The rest only just know that it was a suspected placental abruption. But no one, or hardly anyone, asked what happened and how it was, and what was the cause that ended her life. And just people are just so awkward. Yeah. And just, you know, they'd rather not say anything than maybe say the wrong thing. They're just too scared of saying the wrong thing. But yeah, we need more people that actually acknowledge it and say things like that. Like I didn't have anyone from any medical team besides my obstetrician contact me or help me or do anything afterwards.
What?
Yeah. Besides my obstetrician,
no social workers,
pediatrician,
social workers.
I had a social worker email us what we needed to register her death, and there were some links to some, you know, like SANS and Red Notes and that sort of stuff. But But if it wasn't for my obstetrician, I wouldn't have seen anyone. Wow. No one at Pindara reached out.
Oh, honey.
My obstetrician was just incredible. She organised after-hours appointments for me. She organised a psychologist if I wanted one. She organised a lactation consultant.
Yeah.
So I could wean myself. She just was absolutely incredible. She organised a meeting with the medical team to go over, the possible things that happened. But other than her, I got nothing.
Okay, so I think this is a really great time that if people are listening, how do we support somebody in this space? So from a professional standpoint, I believe my opinion is that the hospital that you birthed at should have continued to reach out to check in on you. At least that if it's not their job, then find someone whose job it is. The hospital that your baby passed away at needs to continue to reach out. Social workers, not just via email, calls. And if there's not enough staff, then get more staff. Your family and friends, if they don't know what to ask and they're scared to say the wrong thing, just say, do you want to talk about it? Just ask the question, because I know that when people came to our place, we said we do not want a quiet house. Please come, people come. And every time people would walk in, they'd cry, they'd hug, they'd bring food, they'd bring whatever. And then we would sit there and I retold Millie's story 50 times over that first couple of days. And they would say, you don't have to talk about it if you don't want. And I'm like, I needed to keep talking about it. I just literally told the story 1,000 times. But people gave me the out if I didn't want to. But I'm like, if I'm not, and I even said it to a client last night, I was the appointment was super quiet. And then once I realized that I knew her, that she knew my story, I just talked about Millie. And I said, I'm either quiet or I'm talking about Millie. It's all that's at the forefront of my mind. And I can't not talk about this. And so the fact that nobody asked you or gave you a space to talk about it, it just sits inside of you, and you're going to implode if you don't talk about it. It's
I did have, a couple of friends that did, and I had a good cry to them, but I must admit I shut myself off from everyone and everything. I disabled Instagram and Facebook, and I put my phone on Do Not Disturb. I didn't want flowers sent to the house. I didn't want, Uber Eats vouchers. I just wanted to be with my family and, try to get up every day. But then when I was ready to, and I did, reach out to a couple of people, I don't know, I guess I just expected more than, how it was.
Yeah.
And I think that's mainly because, people just don't know what to say or don't know how to act. And one thing, I do want to say is don't start a sentence with "at least." Don't try to find the silver lining. There is no silver lining.
There is zero silver lining.
And just listen. And I just seeing babies after that too, for the first few months, that really hurt.
Yeah.
So, just assume that, people might not want to see other kids.
Yeah.
And just come and just be a friend and just sit in the space with you.
Yeah.
That's all you need to do is just sit in that uncomfortable space.
Yeah.
And just let them just talk.
Yeah.
When they're ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think from a lost parent's side of things, if the person is shutting people out like you were, just send shit to the door. I had people saying hey, do you feel like visitors today? And I was like, no. And I had a girlfriend that was like, I've just left 3 meals at your front door. I love you, and left. Do you know what I mean? And I was not opening the door that day. I didn't want to borrow it. But I was still just dropping shit at the door or sending things. I had cousins in Melbourne sending stuff, there was just literally stuff at my door. And even you don't want flowers and you don't want all those things, but you just want to know people fucking love you and that they're thinking of you, And so I imagine that it would be hard for people when the person who is going through loss is saying, I don't want any of these things, and your phone was off and all those things.
Oh, yeah, it would be so hard. Yeah.
They're like, you know, like, okay, what do we do? But that's how you needed to grieve in that time, and that was the right way for you. Like, I'm normally like that. Like, I'm very much like, my phone's on airplane mode at the moment. Like, I'm normally like that, and everyone thought that I would have gone that way, but because Dylan is like, needs all the people, it was like, okay, well, we're letting people in right now. So there's no right or wrong way to do it. Like, you saying I don't want any of that is so okay.
Yeah.
But then when you were ready, yeah, like, just, and I think what you said is really good, like, just come and sit in the uncomfortable space with me, because it is uncomfortable and it is hard. And I give credit to my clients who are coming to my salon absolutely not knowing what they're going to walk into. And I'm professional majority of the time. I've only cried on one shoulder, but, you know, they're so open to that, and I know they are.
Yeah.
It is uncomfortable.
Yeah. Just sit in that uncomfortable spot, and, you know, don't try to make jokes or be sarcastic or try to cheer the person up, because at that moment in time you just need to sit in your grief, and you just need to just let the emotions run.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a time to try to pick them up and just hold them.
And I guess this is why our community is amazing, because there's no one else that you can actually hang out with that can say or do the wrong thing than another person who's been through it. You know, like, I went up and saw a girl, one of the girls that I interviewed the other week, Cassandra, she lost her little Harrison at 4 weeks old, very, very, very suddenly, very unexpected. And I drove to Brisbane.
That one,
oh, mate, like, I just want to put her in my pocket and protect her. I just, you know, she's 21, and I drove up to Brisbane yesterday and had lunch with her, or the other day, and just went to her apartment and just sat with her, and she was just showing me all the photos of Harrison and showing me his bassinet and showing me all her things, and I just was there and just let her show me all the things, you know, like, she just it's just be that person. Just go to their house. Like, I know that when people come here, I'm always like, do you want to see Millie's room? Look at the scrapbook I made. Look at this. Look at this. Like, we just want to show off our babies. Like, we just want to show all the things, and we don't need anyone
to be honest. Sorry.
Yeah, like that. It's just come and look at all our things, or, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, and to be honest, like, I probably was like that too. You know, I probably was a person that didn't know what to say or do, and, you know, I do feel guilty in that. But hopefully now that, you know, people know these things, you know, it can be less daunting and less, you know, awkward, because people are telling you what they need.
Yeah, and I still, like, we had a friend lose a baby a few weeks after Millie, and I didn't even know what to reach out and say. Like, do you know what I mean? And I just experienced it, because, one, we're all different, but still, it's like, the only words you have is, this is fucked, this is shit, I'm so sorry. Like, it's just shit. There is no silver lining. There is nothing you can say to make anyone feel better. It's just, this is shit, how can I help? Or, this is shit, do you need company? Do you want to have a coffee? Like, I've had 1,000 people reach out, let's go for coffee. And sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. And it's just shit. It's just shit.
Yeah.
I do want to ask a few more questions. So when they said that they thought you'd had an abruption, what does that mean? So this was when they were about to rush you in for the cesarean. What's an abruption?
Yeah. So an abruption is where your placenta comes away from the uterus too early.
Okay.
So it's supposed to happen, but it's supposed to happen after the baby's out.
Okay.
So when it comes away from the uterus, it's like the baby's hemorrhaging, because the placenta is its lifeline.
Yeah.
So everything's cut off, oxygen, blood supply, everything's cut off, because the placenta doesn't have the uterus now to feed it. So that was the first suspicion as to what was happening.
And that wasn't the case?
Well, this is the hard thing. So afterwards, my obstetrician sent away my placenta, and my placenta was fine. It was perfectly intact. It was healthy. It showed nothing. And we found that out in the medical meeting we had with the paediatrician and my obstetrician and another staff member. And so at that point we just were like, well, then what the hell happened? And no one knew anything. So we sent her away for an autopsy.
Okay, yeah.
So the autopsy came back, the preliminary autopsy came back that she had a lesion on her adrenal gland. She had no clotting factors in her blood, so her blood couldn't clot. She had a fractured skull.
Fuck.
And she had a lesion on her brain. But they still said out of those, they still don't know what caused the hemorrhage to the brain and what eventually took her life. So they wanted to do further testing. So we're currently at 14 months and we still haven't heard. But in the meantime, I went to a haematologist at the Gold Coast Uni Hospital because we fell pregnant again. And she talked me through it with her professional opinion. So she thinks, after reading everything and just being that outside person looking in, she thinks that I had a placental abruption. So my placenta came away from the uterus in labour, which cut off the blood supply and the oxygen, which meant then she came out lifeless because she was, deprived of oxygen. And then after that, the damage had already been done, so she was already bleeding internally. And because she was so little, she didn't have many clotting factors. So she was just so depleted from trying to stop the bleed that she just lost all of her clotting factors. So therefore, the bleed just got worse and worse and worse, and nothing could stop it, and nothing could bring her back. So that's what she thinks happened. And it all makes sense if that is the case. But yeah, we are still waiting for the final autopsy results, and they said that could take 12 to 18 months, and even then we might not get an answer.
Fuck.
So at this point in time, to us, that's what happened.
Yeah.
It all makes sense. Her blood pressure was dropping when she was still in utero, in labour, and, if her oxygen supply did get cut off, then that's why she came out lifeless. And it just all kind of fell into place when she explained it to me.
Yeah.
And that was the most answers we've got so far. So that's literally all we've got to go off. And then the neurosurgeon, said, yes, that's more than likely what happened. But, the injuries from the delivery and all that sort of stuff contributed then to what happened afterwards and the injuries that occurred afterwards with the bleeding to the brain and, the irreparable damage. And, she had like a severe hypoxia, so that's severe lack of oxygen to the brain. So,
it's a fucking lot. It's just a lot.
Yeah. And I actually emailed them yesterday, the coroner, to see if there's been an update. So yeah, it's just a waiting game.
There's no, like, she was fine prior to that. Like, it wasn't.
She was perfectly healthy. Yeah, I had a scan at 38 and a half weeks, maybe even 39 weeks, and she was perfect and measuring perfectly. And her heart rate was high at a few of my appointments, and I did have to be admitted into hospital to be monitored, but it always came down. There was no indication of anything that was going to go wrong or be wrong. And, right up until the potential abruption, she was a perfectly healthy 8-pound baby.
Fuck. How long had it been between your... Now I get really curious because obviously I always am looking to my future as well of like, okay, so, you had a cesarean with Olive, and we have to wait 12 months before we're allowed to have a pregnancy again. Obviously Olive was 2, so you said that you were low risk for anything going wrong with a VBAC, and you were allowed to go again. Was it anything to do with the VBAC itself, or that it wasn't because of that?
Well, again, we don't know, but one of the risks in having a VBAC is a placental abruption.
Okay.
But it's quite a low risk.
Yeah.
Especially these days with all the monitoring and, because she wasn't breech, you know, everything was fine. It was not a complicated pregnancy. I was being monitored throughout. It was a very low risk, and I just happened to be that statistic that's in that low risk range.
Yeah. And so how long in between Imri's birth and falling pregnant with your third?
Not long. Mm-hmm. So between Olive and Imri, there was 2 years and 2 months. And Imri and Oki, our little boy, is 11 months.
Oki's so cute. What a cute name. You guys choose the cutest names. And so 11 months, so you fell pregnant within 2?
Yeah, so afterwards I reached out to my naturopath and I just said, like, this is what happened. Please just help me with anything you can that's just going to, you know, help with healing.
Yes.
I'm a big believer in natural medicine and all that sort of stuff. So I just said anything that, you know, can help my milk dry up and help with healing, just give it to me.
Yeah.
And I guess because I wasn't breastfeeding, she could give me more than what they normally would for after cesarean recovery. Because, my cycles, like I had to do a bit of work to fall pregnant with Olive and Imri, but this time I got my period back at 10 weeks and my husband was going away for work and I ovulated 5 days after he left for work and I fell pregnant.
What the actual holy heck?
Yeah. And I knew that I was, because I've just always known when I've been pregnant, and I took a test and I just, you know, the dates just weren't adding up and it came back negative and I was like, okay, it's just all in your head, Hannah. You know,
your hormones are all over the shop. Yeah.
And we had always, you know, said we would try again, you know, the following year. If we were mentally and physically, you know, ready, we would try again, because we've just got so much love to give. And just always wanted, you know, siblings and, you know, just kind of not a big family, but, you know, an average family.
Yeah.
And then a couple of days later, I just was like, no, like something's not right here. Like I just feel different. And I took another test and it was negative again. And then I was like, okay, the dates just don't add up now. Like it's just all in your head, Hannah. Just get over it. And then I don't know what it was. I just took another one a couple of days later and there was the faintest line and I just was shocked. By this stage, my husband was home from work and I just called out to him and I was like, I'm pregnant. And we just both looked at each other and just were like, what the hell? Like, how? And so I was three months postpartum and I was pregnant again.
Fuck.
Yeah.
And so looking at that, what did your obstetrician say based on you just had a cesarean? Because they say you're supposed to wait 12 months for the healing of the internal scarring of your uterus. You've had 2 emergency cesareans. What was the advice from there?
So she basically said, she reassured me it's okay, you know, not to stress, it's okay. You know, you healed really well after Olive's cesarean. When we went back in, you had hardly any scar tissue. You know, it was like you just healed like perfectly.
How did they check that?
When they went in to take Imri out, she could see like the scarring. Because they say sometimes it's harder to get in your second and your third time around because of all the scar tissue.
Gotcha.
But I didn't have that. It was just, she said, I just recovered really well. And so she said, let's just see how it goes. Try to relax, even though I know you won't be able to, and just we'll play it by ear. And then, that was just it was a whirlwind of a pregnancy. I had to kind of just not acknowledge it to anybody. because I just knew if people kept talking to me about it and I actually sat in the thought that I was pregnant again, I just know that I got that feeling of losing a child again, and I just couldn't bring myself to feel that. So then to not kind of sit in the thought that I'm pregnant, it didn't bring that thought of losing a child in again.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So that was like my way of dealing with it. And although we were so like happy and grateful and excited to, you know, potentially have another child, it also was, quite difficult to comprehend as well.
I don't
so soon after.
I don't know how I don't know how that's going to feel. I hear so many different ways people deal with it or get through it, and it's like I don't know. I can only imagine. Like, you know, you just want to honor this child that deserves so much love, but you have so much fear, and there's no doubt there's love there because you love them so intensely. Like, it's so fuck it. I know. I think I'm ready, but like at the same time, I'm fucking petrified. Like, we've been go.
Sorry, I was just going to say, like, between my husband and I and Olive, it was very much like, this is an exciting thing. You know, this child is so loved and this child is so wanted, and you know, and between our family and stuff, that was, you know, talked about quite often. But I don't know, just the outside world, it was just like another element of all the questions of, you know, how many weeks are you now? And, you know, what's going on here? And what test have you done? And how'd the scan go? And all that sort of, not pressure, but just, I don't know, that constant talking about it was just, it just brought up something that I can't really explain. No. But to us, it was like, you know, this is our own little family bubble. Yeah. And we're just going to enjoy it and just get through it.
That makes so much sense. That makes so much sense. That's really beautiful. And it does make sense. I can feel it. Like when you say like all the questions and the scans and this, it's like, well, that's overwhelming. That's too much. But my safe bubble of my family and each other, and I have no doubt Oki felt so much love in utero and all of those things, like, of course. And
I hope so.
Yeah, of course he did. Of course he did. And, you know, he healed his big sister because she's just now the weight of the world is off her little tiny shoulders. And
and she's just so obsessed. And, you know, now that he's here in his home, it's just, you appreciate it before, but it's like a whole nother level of appreciation. You know, you're not complaining about the sleepless nights, and you're not, you know, complaining that, you know, they kept you up because they were grunting with wind and like just all the little things. You're just like, I'm just soaking it all in. Just so much more. You're not caught up in that overwhelmed bubble of the newborn stage. You just it's just pure love and just gratefulness that they are here.
Absolutely. Dylan and I talk about that all the time. Like, man, we can't wait for all of that. Like, and we know we will get it. We know that will happen, but like, it's like, you just want it so bad.
Yeah.
And so did you have a planned cesarean for Oki?
So we did.
Yeah.
Our advice was to deliver him. He was the first one that we knew the gender of officially. We had the NIP test for the first time and found out the gender at 10 weeks. So we called him Oki the entire pregnancy. To Olive, it was baby Oki, you know. And so my obstetrician's advice was to deliver him at 37 weeks.
Gotcha.
Because you don't want to go into spontaneous labour because then that just adds a whole nother risk again.
Yeah.
37 weeks, you know, the statistic of them being okay and not having to go into NICU is quite high. There is a possibility still because their lungs have only just fully developed at that stage. But, you know, you've got to weigh up the risks and benefits.
Yeah.
And so she said, we'll book you in at 37 weeks and, you know, you can have a maternal assisted cesarean. We'll try everything so that he's on your chest straight away. And if he needs to go into NICU, then, you know, just prepare yourself, but he will be okay. And so it got to 30, almost 37 weeks, and I had booked in for the Wednesday. So I would have been 37 and 3. And the last weekend, with just Olive, we decided to take her to the movies for the first time. And we were seeing Paw Patrol, and she was so excited. And, we got our Choc Top and the popcorn, and we went in, and we just went to sit down, and I just felt something, and I was like, oh, that is a familiar thing. I think my waters have broke, but just like a slow rupture. So it wasn't like a in the movies gush. And I just was like to Sean, I'm just going to go to the toilet. I didn't say anything to him because I was like, it's probably in your head. Went to the toilet and sat down, and it just a whole rupture. And I just was like, oh my gosh. Rang him and was like, you need to come out now. My waters have just broken. We need to get to the hospital. And so he's grabbed Olive, and they've come out, and she's kicking and screaming. And she's like, I just want to watch Paw Patrol.
This poor little darling.
And I'm like, Mummy's waters are broken. You need to get in the car. We're going to have baby Oki today. And so she's got a Choc Top and walking down the stairs, and all these people are walking up, and it was, yeah.
How
I rang the
stressful
hospital, and I
for
was
you.
like, my waters are broken. We're in Tweed. What do I do? And she just said, don't panic, but you need to get to the hospital. If you can't get here straight away, call an ambulance. Just get here as fast as you can. And I was like, I'm 45 minutes away. And she's like, that's okay. Just get here as quickly as you can. So we just got in the car and just drove straight up there. No hospital bag, no one to take Olive. We just got there. And we got out of the car, and I got met with the midwife, and it was so funny. She came down with a towel and literally put the towel between my legs like a floss, basically. And I had to walk up the stairs in front of all these people that were sitting there waiting for their appointments. And I walked in and got on the monitor, and he was all good. And they just said, like, you need to go into theatre now. There's a 4-hour case happening. You don't have time to wait. You've got to go in there now. And so then literally within half an hour of getting there, I was in theatre. Olive had to go to the midwives to be looked after. All of our friends had COVID at the time, so none of them could come and look after Olive. Rang my sister, 2.5 hours away, said, jump in the car and just get here as quickly as you can. Went into theatre, and it just, his heart rate dropped on the way into theatre, and I knew that sound, and I just was like, not again. And the spinal wouldn't work again. But I wasn't having contractions. So he just kept on trying, and he was like, okay, last go before you go under.
Is Dana your anaesthetist at Pindara? Was it Dana?
No, Steve.
I love
Steve McMenon, I think, maybe.
Okay.
And he ended up getting it on the last go. And so, but he wouldn't allow a maternal assisted cesarean because it was classed as an emergency. And my poor obstetrician just cried. She was like, I'm just so sorry. Like, I know how much you wanted this, but it's just not possible. And I just was like, look, nothing matters now. Just get him out. Yeah. Get him out safe, and like nothing else matters. And my husband and I just literally cried the entire time, and then they dropped the curtain, and then he came out and he cried. And literally that was just the best moment. He just cried, and we looked at each other and just burst into tears and just said, he's okay. He's okay. And then they quickly checked him over, and he went back on my chest, and that's where he stayed. He stayed until we got back to the room, and then Olive was already there. She got to meet him straight away.
What a fucking dream. Like, that is just...
And it just... Yeah, he was fine. He didn't need to go into NICU. He was, 7.1 pounds, 3.2 kilos. He was perfect.
What an absolute blessing. Something that people experience every single day and just absolutely take for granted. Like, that is just a dream.
Yeah. And he chose his own date, which, like, we were so thankful for, because we were always like, are we doing the right thing? Like, if he comes out and he needs support, like, we're going to feel guilty. But he didn't. He chose his date, and he was pretty much bang on 37 weeks. And no issues. Just, yeah.
Because that's what will happen to me. We will have to have a planned cesarean at about 37 weeks because of my T incision on my fucking uterus. Yeah. And that's why I'm asking you so many questions about it, because we want to fall pregnant sooner. We've been told 12 months minimum. And, you know, it's just, I do feel like maybe our OB did more damage in there than what we had initially thought, because he's quite strictly 12 months.
Yeah.
And I don't want to fucking put myself or my baby at risk, of course, but it's like, I know I'm never allowed to go into labor again. My GP the other day was like, no home births, no VBACs. I'm like, not a fucking chance. I know that. Like, I will go in for a planned cesarean. And she's like, it might be at like 37, 38 weeks. And so my thought was, okay, well, is Bob okay at that point? Like, I, don't want to put my baby at risk. So hearing that little Oki came out at 37 weeks without NICU is like so amazing.
Yeah. And like my obstetrician said, like, it's literally down to the baby. You know, they could come out at 38, 39 weeks and still need NICU.
Yeah. Okay.
Or they could come out at 36 and be totally fine.
Okay.
You never know until that moment.
Yeah.
And the thing that made it even more like a wow moment was Oki and Imri had the same due date. So Oki's first due date was Imri's birthday, the 1st of November. And then when you go to that scan, and they confirm it, and then they do the due date based on the size, then his revised due date was the 28th of October, which is Imri's original due date.
Oh, my word.
So they were a year apart to the day, but Imri was a week late and Oki was 3 weeks early. So they're 11 months apart.
So what date did he end up being born?
The 8th of October.
What a little angel.
Yeah.
Just a little heaven-sent angel he was. He is.
Yeah.
Gosh. Wow.
So it's just been a whirlwind.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. You guys are just... I'm speechless. I don't know, but like your stories, just and everything that you have been through. Have you had professional help? Did you see psychologists? Have you used any counselling services?
My husband and I went to one, but the lady we just didn't gel with, and she just was like, this is the only one I can do because then I'm moving overseas.
Perfect.
So we kind of were like, well, what's the point of getting a rapport and stuff with you? And then I went to Petals in Robina, which is a perinatal like psychologist around all that sort of stuff. And I went to 2, but it just wasn't for me. Some people are just really good at talking to psychologists and working through stuff, and I don't know, that's not me.
Yeah.
I find more support through my family.
Okay.
I'm just not an emotional person, and just not for me, basically. It's not for everyone.
Yeah, so. That's so fine. My question is always just because it's like, holy heck, you've been through so much, and what avenues have you taken to make sure that your mental health and your emotional health is looked after as well?
Yeah.
So it's amazing you have great family.
We're really lucky.
Yeah. Well, actually, I wanted to touch on one more thing before we finish. I believe that you have taken on a few little projects and things since all of this has happened. So what is it that you do now in the baby loss space?
So I am a teacher, so I've got a permanent position with Queensland Education, but I'm currently on leave, and whilst I've been on leave, I've taken up photography as a bit of a hobby. I've named I wouldn't necessarily call it a business because I'm still learning, very much learning, but it's called Imri May Creative. And so with that platform, I've then been able to start volunteering with Heartfelt,
Yay.
which are the beautiful photographers that come and take photos in the hospital of bubs and their families. We had a beautiful Heartfelt photographer, and I just cherished those photos, and just that was one thing that I really connected with and really knew that I could carry on Imri's honour in helping other families do that. So I do that. I haven't done an official session yet. I've done Christmas in July's and that sort of stuff. But because I was pregnant, I couldn't go to any sessions yet. So
fair.
I've just told them that I'm back and I am ready to start taking on sessions as of this month. And then I also volunteer with Precious Wings, which are the memory boxes. So I was on their events committee this year organising their biggest luncheon, which is their biggest annual fundraising event. So I was on the events committee to that. Unfortunately, I couldn't go because Oki was born a couple of days before the luncheon.
Yeah.
But I'm also one of the hospital reps as well. So pick up the orders and deliver the orders to the hospital. We actually did our first one yesterday. So the car was full of Precious Wings boxes and we've got to deliver them to Gold Coast Uni from Brisbane.
Wow.
Those are the two things that I'm doing just to honour Imri and just to feel like I'm giving back to the people that I felt really were there. The things that they do, it's just incredible. You're so thankful for what they gave you that you just want to give it back.
I know that Heartfelt are screaming out for more volunteers, and it just takes a really, really special person to do that role. I messaged Elle, she was our photographer, all the bloody time, like literally just like, hey, I found this new photo today in my file that I hadn't seen, or hey, I just framed this one today. Like it is so invaluable what Heartfelt do, and
That's actually how I found your podcast, because she posted on our our Heartfelt Queensland page and just said like this was one of the families that I photographed, and she's got a podcast now. It's a beautiful listen to get an idea into the family's perspective if you want to listen. And so I found your podcast through her.
Oh, how good is that? I love that.
Yeah.
She had said to me she's not allowed to I don't think they're allowed to reach out to you without permission, but I tagged something and that gave her permission or whatever. And so then she was like, as soon as you kind of reached out to me, then she was just like all over it. And she's like, I would have never shared your stuff if, you hadn't given me permission. And I said, oh my gosh, share it, of course. Like, so she always goes up and tells the midwives at the hospital and passes on messages and stuff.
I didn't know your story or anything. It literally was just like one of the families I photographed for is doing a really good podcast. And, this is a podcast link. If you want to have a listen to families' perspectives, it's just, it's invaluable for, us and other people that, the photographers that haven't lost.
Yes.
Then get an understanding as the other side of what they're doing and how much it means. To the families, so that they do, as hard as it is, do keep going because they know how much it means.
Oh, totally. And I think I would hope that maybe people listening who are photographers or who have even just the tiniest bit of creativity or ability to do that, they're just invaluable. And I have no photography skills, so I wouldn't be able to. But the way they take the photos, like sometimes I look at Millie's and I'm like, how did she even think to take that photo? Like that's so magical. And she was just so gentle and she just melted into the background, and she probably did way more things than I even remember. Like I know that she did pass on her number to a few of our family members, and I don't even know. And then she also came to Millie's funeral and she came to the wake, and beautiful. It just, that felt like it was right for me. I'm like, Dylan kept saying, I think it's weird, don't do that. And I was like, I think I'll regret it if I don't, because I still can't remember who came to her funeral. And so of course she wouldn't let us pay her, Elle. And so we sent Uber Eats vouchers so that she could buy food and stuff, because we were like, you're not doing it for free, I know that you're a volunteer, but we asked you to be here. But again, all of those photos are just so magical. We love them.
it's something that, like, when you first hear of it suggested to you, like, oh, that's really weird. Like, I just don't think I can do it. But then you look back and you're just like, that was the most precious memory to have.
Absolutely.
It's just those photos, because
Absolutely.
that's all you.
And as someone who's going to be in that space, you may have heard it on some of the podcasts or whatever, but Elle picked up my phone, or Dylan, my phone. Oh gosh, this will take you right back as well. Like that time when they take the tubes out and they're having that final moment on your chest, and Elle picked up my phone in that moment, and she just walked around the room, and we just have like about a 1.5 minute video of Millie on our chest with no tubes and she did make a little gurgling sound, and she, and like we were just speaking so much love into her, and we have a video of that. And I found it weeks later, and I messaged her and just said like, oh my word, I've just found this moment in my phone. And she said, I do it quite often, but I never know what people think of it. Like, and I was like, I fucking love it. Like,
yeah.
So, even
it's just so precious. And they're just so special.
Yeah.
The people that do it, you take your hat off to them, because it's such a hard gig, but it's just so, so valuable to the families.
And now you have the ability to do that as well. Like, I love that. Yeah. So like, you are just going to be amazing in that space, and even them seeing you cry with them and all the things, I always say it about the midwives, like them crying with me, them hugging me, them caring, them looking, like Elle just looked at us with love the whole time she was doing it. Like, it just, and you will be that person for all these other families.
Yeah. Thank you.
Amazing.
And I also just want to say too, before we finish up, is like, I know I said I didn't get anything afterwards, and I felt a little bit left down. I have to say that going back to the same hospital, so Pindara, just most of the midwives were just so incredible, and just so supportive, and they literally just held me and just, reassured me that I wasn't being just an anxious pregnant person. They just, even this one beautiful midwife, she knew she wasn't there for when I had Imri, but she just came in and she just said, like, I read your story, and I just want to let you know that I'm so sorry for your loss, and whatever you need, we're here. However you want this to go, like, we're here. We're just here to support you. And my parents lost a child before me, and I just want to let you know that, I get a sense of what it's like, and I am so loved by my parents, because I was so loved and I was so wanted, and they appreciated every moment just that little bit more, because they knew how precious life was. And she just, I don't know, melted me in.
That was Siobhan. I bet you it was Siobhan, and she's like British. She's amazing. She was my midwife.
And so she was just incredible, and I just was like, you weren't here for Imri's birth. You didn't have to mention her at all. You could have just gone about your day and just pretended, like you didn't know anything, but you just made such an effort to say that. And just the midwives there are just so beautiful.
They are.
So caring. Yeah. So although, like, I didn't get anything afterwards, I still appreciate them so much, and they're just so beautiful, so good at what they do. And they definitely supported me a lot with my third pregnancy, which I'll be forever grateful for.
Yeah. I'm still in two minds. I want to go back there. I love them. I love the midwives. I love everything. I just think I have so much trauma in it. So it's like really scary. But I know that you're like a lot of people say that the healing comes from going back there again. So that will just be something I have to work on over time and see how I go. Yeah. But thank you so much for sharing. I do I agree with you. The midwives and stuff there are divine, and we did have a beautiful experience.
Yeah, they're amazing.
So thank you for sharing your incredible story today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I think I cried the most because it was just so like, literally everything you were saying was taking me right back to the exact same fucking experience. Like, I can see now why you reached out. So I love that you shared about Olive and Oki, and I just think they're little angels as well. They are just so
Yeah.
so beautiful, that they will be so strong because of your experience, and everything you've done is perfect and amazing. And yeah, giving you guys the biggest hug from afar. I can't wait to meet you. We're having a catch up in January, everyone. I hope you're going to come. Yeah. So
Definitely.
thank you for sharing your story, and I hope you guys have a beautiful Christmas with your beautiful babes, and Imri will be with you. And I know Imri and Millie are dancing up in heaven right now going, yay! So proud of their mummies. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And you have a lovely Christmas too. I know it will be difficult.
Yeah.
But just, sit in the love from your family and just,
survive. Just going to try to survive. Yeah. Thank you so much. All right, my lovely. All right.
Thank you.
Chat soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Little Life, Big Loss. If you are here because you've experienced baby loss recently or a long time ago, I'm so sorry. I know this pain will never go away. My heart breaks with you. This is a pain no one ever expects to endure. Or maybe you are listening because you have just found out your baby is unwell in utero, and now you have some really hard-hitting decisions to make. I am, again, so sorry. These are decisions no parent should ever have to make. I hope these podcasts can lighten the load just a little bit in ways to help understand what the road ahead might look like and what your options are. Remember, you always have options. It is your body and your baby. If you have never experienced the loss of a baby and you are here to learn, thank you. We want to be heard and listened to. You will help someone somewhere with the knowledge taken from these podcasts. If any of today's conversation has triggered any uneasy emotions for you, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14 or lifeline.org. Another organisation working specifically with pre- and postnatal depression and anxiety is Panda. You can find them at panda.org.au. And remember, postnatal depression and anxiety does not discriminate. It can affect both men and women, mums and dads. Please seek help from your GP, a psychologist, your local hospital, a midwife, obstetrician, Lifeline, or Panda. Thank you again for listening. I love you and miss you, my Millie.